Also, as you might have heard, the Colorado Avalanche are in the Stanley Cup Finals. Nathan MacKinnon, baby, he's going out there competing for a cup. But of course, he is not the only player on this team. In fact, he's not the only good player on this team. Sure, he might be the best, maybe second best, debatably. Cale Makar is up there. But there are so many other good pieces on this Colorado squad, in and out of the lineup. From guys that really came alive last night, like that Nathan MacKinnon, like Mikko Rantanen, like Gabriel Landeskog, and guys that are out of the lineup too, like Samuel Girard, there is definitely a plentiful amount of talent. But one of the names that might not actually suit up in the Stanley Cup Finals right away, depending on his recovery curve, is Nazem Kadri. Now, Kadri's a really interesting name because the past few years have been kind of rough for this guy. Especially when you talk about his tenure in Toronto, where playing on a team that housed the likes of Phil Kessel and Tyler Bozak and Dion Phaneuf and Jake Gardiner, you had just such an interesting career that he had. He had a career-high points per game-wise of 44 points in 48 games in 2012-2013. Back then, the guy was 23 years old, and the team got eliminated in the Game 7 against Boston, the first one, I mean, where they blew a 4-1 lead, and, yeah, you know what happens next, don't you? But either way, Nazem Kadri was always this skilled, offensively capable, and agitator out there on the ice as well. It led to a few problems here and there in the postseason when the guy would get entangled and suspended for things that you could definitely say he had control over. It was somewhat of a pattern. Either way, though, Nazem Kadri was traded from the Toronto Maple Leafs over to the Colorado Avalanche before the start of the 2019 season. 2019-20 season, that is. It's kind of funny because the trade actually involves a few names that you might be familiar with. Hey, Tyson Barrie was sent over to Toronto in the deal. He was just in the Stanley Cup Western Conference Finals matchup against the Colorado Avalanche. And you also have Calle Rosen, who was acquired with Nazem Kadri from Toronto to Colorado. And now, a few years later, you saw Calle Rosen and Kadri get involved in a Jordan Binnington hit that was kind of making headlines all over the hockey world. But aside from that, Nazem Kadri's point production absolutely grew during his tenure with the Colorado Avalanche. It didn't come right away. He had 36 points in 51 games his first season and 32 points in 56 games the year after that. However, this season, under a limited sample for the Colorado Avalanche, as he did not play a full 82 games, he had 87 points in 71 games played only, and he almost got 30 goals. Now, he hit the mark of 30 in previous years with the Maple Leafs, but still, I mean, the amount of assists this guy got shattered some of the other point records he had in Toronto before. Even in the postseason, before the Evander Kane shenanigans and the hit that caused him to miss out on the rest of the Edmonton series, he had 14 points in 13 games over there. Definitely a top-tier point producer for the Avalanche. Now, we haven't talked about the contract and everything. That was always a big point of contention. Oh, he was signed to a $4.5 million AAV by the previous Toronto regime. It was going on until 2021-2022, and now, as a 31-year-old coming off of an 87-point year, Nazem Kadri is going to be a free agent. Who knows if the Colorado Avalanche are going to be able to re-sign him. That's not the conversation I wanted to have in this video, though, because I wanted to turn your attention to a Reddit post that was posted onto the LEAFS subreddit. It's a really interesting read, and it's one that I think kind of goes out there and highlights what could have been if the Maple Leafs just decided, instead of trading him away in 2019, to stick around with his services. Because, of course, if the Maple Leafs did not trade away Nazem Kadri, they kept everything the way it was, and if you assume Kadri becomes the exact same player that he is today, I mean, a $4.5 million AAV contract player who gets nearly 30 goals and a full 60 assists on a year without playing the full year? Like, that is an absolute bargain. Sign me up right now. Let's do the math. 87 divided by 71 multiplied out by 82. This guy was on pace for 100 points over an 82-game year, and he would only be making $4.5 million. That is less than William Nylander. That is slightly more than Alex Kerfoot. That would have been a steal. But with hindsight, it's easy to go out there and say that. It's why this Reddit post goes out there and tries to lay it down there on the line by just opening your eyes to the realism that is hindsight. It's easy to say now that Dubas should have kept Kadri, but at the time, it was still the right move. Leafs and Core says. Kadri is possibly playing his best hockey he would ever play in his career, and it doesn't surprise me it's during his contract year. Good luck with that, Joe. Anyways, it's easy to say that Dubas made the wrong move, but at the time, John Tavares was still elite, and we all knew Matthews was going to be. Kadri was coming off of back-to-back disappointing playoff runs, and this team needed defense. Barrie was an elite defender coming off a great season as well. Hindsight is 2020, but at the time, the trade needed to happen. Now, some of the comments go out there and dispute the idea of what exactly the value was of the assets the Leafs got in return, but when it comes to Tyson Barrie specifically, I remember a lot of people in Toronto saying things like, hey, this guy, Tyson Barrie, is legitimately a good point-producing, right-handed quarterbacking defenseman, and the Maple Leafs could use that. And to be fair, he scored. He got a lot of points. He had 39 points in the 70-game sample he played, which isn't really as much as you would have wanted it to be compared to the contract that he had. But also, there were defensive liability issues that Barrie definitely did show off as a member of the Leafs, and it's why they let go of that experiment immediately after. Now he's on now he's on Edmonton. He had a #1 defenseman point-producing year, getting 48 points in 56 games. Despite the fact that he led all D-men in scoring last year, he did not get a Norris vote, which was interesting to say the least, but you know what? It's not the first time it's happened before. This season, though, he is in Edmonton again, 41 points, 73 games. You know what you're getting with Tyson Barrie here. But for Nazem Kadri, just seeing what he has been able to do, it's kind of wild just to take a look at the progression of his career and acknowledge that not just on the ice, but off the ice as well, it's been a journey, and he's absolutely gone out there and climbed the mountain to the point that now he's one of the most underrated stars in the National Hockey League. Going back over to the Reddit post, though, also talking about the topic of hindsight, I like this comment here from the Tony Hightower. Kadri has definitely matured as a player and as a person, but the trade was a wake-up call. No guarantee that the growth would have happened had he stayed here. I suspect he would agree to this point himself. He'd also eaten a lot of cap space for a third-line center, and people here would have whatever the heck that word means about that the whole time. You have to remember that back when Kadri was a Maple Leaf, I mean, look, he's playing behind Tavares, he's playing behind Matthews. Sure, those guys might not have produced as many points as Kadri did this season, John Tavares especially, but it's John Tavares and Austin Matthews. You gotta remember that third-line center, sure, Alex Kerfoot is a downgrade from Nazem Kadri, but this is not really a guy that you're supposed to go out there and rely upon to the extent that Colorado relies on Nazem, which is second-line center responsibility. They go out there and play him behind McKinnon, your third-line center over there. It cycles around. You've got Newhook, you've got JT Compher, you've got a few other guys that can be a center for this team. So there's just a lot more of an availability for a player like Nazem Kadri to get top minutes, top matchups, and showcase his skill at the best level possible. Plus the fact that, I mean, Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar setting you up on the power play definitely helps as well. It's just in Toronto, you could argue there wasn't enough room for something like that to happen, especially now. With the Morgan Rileys of the world, plus the Marners, plus the Matthewses, plus the Tavareses, and plus the Nylanders, there was already a lot going on that top power play unit. So, at the end of the day, is Nazem Kadri really the one that got away for the Toronto Maple Leafs? You could say, in a way, yes, because, he's a former Leaf and now he's really good, but at the same time, it's honestly somewhat unrealistic to say that had Nazem Kadri stayed in Toronto, they didn't make the Barrie trade, they didn't trade away Rose and everything, they didn't get Kerfoot, that he would have panned out to being the same 87-point in 71-game player. Actually, screw that, I'm going to say 100-point player. He scored at a 100-point pace. Like, that's incredible for Nazem Kadri, a guy that was not playing top-line minutes on this team for an extended amount of time. I know McKinnon was gone for a good portion of the season, but still, Nathan McKinnon is your guy, and Nazem Kadri in comparison, albeit being very good himself, is just not there. So you can let me know your thoughts in the comments about Nazem Kadri, whether or not he really is the one that got away, or if he was just a very good and mature development profile that happened to go from Toronto to Colorado. Do you think the Maple Leafs are still thinking about this? Because, okay, look, they're probably not. Like, there's no reason for them to do that. But do you think there should be more conversations about this type of thing? A link will be in the description of the video to the Reddit post if you want to go ahead and read what it is the rest of the commenters on our Leafs have to say. But talk to me in the comments of this video as well what your thought process is on Kadri and the Maple Leafs. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.